evening. I'm Jennifer Copeland.
And I'm Bob Montgomery. Rick has the night off. Now, India is really making some national headlines these days, and some of our own state and local leaders say it's embarrassing.
Yeah, right now people are using a Boycott Indiana hashtag on Twitter, and it's all because of the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. WSBT 22's Kelly Stopczynski is looking into all sides of this tonight. And Kelly, we've heard a lot about this law and how it pertains to the same-sex marriage debate, but people who support it say it's about a lot more.
This is about how religion impacts our everyday lives. We're talking a Muslim inmate in Arkansas. The Supreme Court is allowing him to keep his beard because of federal RFRA laws already in place. It's also about the fight over providing birth control at Notre Dame. But there's growing concern tonight about the potential damage created by the perception of Indiana's newest law.
Numbers on the wing, it's Mack, and he hits a three.
The last leg of the big dance in Indianapolis is turning into big controversy.
Back to Hayward, puts it up, yes!
The NCAA says it is looking at how Indiana's new religious freedom law might affect future events and its workforce.
Well, the situation even here in flyover land America is clearly spinning out of control. In response to what's happening down in Indiana, today on stream.org, Catholic columnist John Zmirak nails it pretty well when he writes, quote, "History teaches that mass vilification rarely stops short of spilling blood. The French Jacobins, who spent the 1780s slandering the clergy in pornographic pamphlets, went on in the 1790s to slaughter Christians by the hundreds of thousands. The Turks paved the way for killing 1 million Armenian Christians with a wave of propaganda. The Bolsheviks followed their anti-God crusade of the 1920s with starvation camps and firing squads. The communist governments of Eastern Europe obeyed the same script, as scholar Anne Applebaum documents in her sobering study, The Iron Curtain. The Hutu governments of Rwanda prepared for its assault on the once powerful Tutsis by incessantly describing them as cockroaches on radio broadcasts, which triggered a, you guessed it, genocide." And Zmirak continues, "If the media, the law, and our elite institutions succeed in lumping Christian sexual morals in with white racism, how long will it be before believing Catholics find themselves labeled as members of extremist sects, no more to be trusted with the care of their own children than the Branch Davidians were?" End quote. These are sobering thoughts indeed, but I couldn't possibly agree more. Anyone who's tuned into Fox News or CNN over the past week or so and checked out what's happening down in Indiana can readily recognize that Mr. Zmirak is certainly not paranoid and is not exaggerating. I mean, folks, this is it. This is it. The wheels are beginning to come off this whole experiment. But again, for me, the raison d'etre of the authentic traditional Catholic movement comes to mind at times like these. Let me share some thoughts with you on this. I think first and foremost, it was not liturgical preferences that motivated Archbishop Lefebvre or Castro Mayer or the great Michael Davies or John Sr. or my own father, Walter Matt, and the rest of the pioneers of traditionalism to stand up and resist the diabolical spirit of the Second Vatican Council 45 years ago. When these men said lex orandi, lex credendi, until they were blue in the face, they actually meant it. How Catholics pray is how they believe, and how Catholics believe determines the lengths to which they will go in defense of the rights of Christ the King and the state. This is what these men were concerned about. Yes, they led with the defense of the traditional Latin Mass and the restoration of liturgical sanity, but what they were worried about was the loss of a Catholic identity, chaos in the state, if the Catholic Church would cease to be the moral authority that she always has been. So what we're seeing today in Indiana and all across the country and in Europe really makes the warnings that these men raised back then positively prophetic. What we are seeing in America today is the total rejection of the kingship of Christ. What we are seeing in America and in Europe today is a crowd whipped up once again into a frenzy by those who hate Christ, screaming, crucify him, all over again, and with such rage that even the new procurators of our vaunted new order, our new world order, actually fear the mob as much as Pilate did, and they're controlled by it. Politicians such as Governor Pence seem like a nice guy. They may be well-meaning, but they don't get it. And they certainly are no Garcia Moreno, who, having defeated the very same Masonic revolutionary forces that are now controlling the situation here and in Europe, he defeated them down in the Republic of Ecuador. And he said at the time, "Liberty for everyone and for everything, save for evil and evildoers." But you see, we can't say that anymore. That is un-American. We will not hear that again for a very long time. Because in a good democracy, you don't speak that way. You don't make judgments. Who are you to judge? And yet this is precisely, in a nutshell, the only thing that will save America. The only thing that will save Europe. A restoration of the idea of Christian morality and decency, natural law, and so forth. But instead of even going down that road, our politicians, especially on the left now, are simply trying to silence the Christian voice altogether in the public square. And their counterparts over on the right are busying themselves preparing to wash their own hands of the blood of Christians that will soon be shed in the name of liberty and equality all across this country. And while this is happening, one might say, well, where are the bishops? Exactly, where are the bishops? Where is the Pope? Why have we heard nothing from the church in the face of this situation? Because they've all fled. Don't you remember? Don't you see what's happening here? History is repeating itself. The mystical body of Christ is undergoing the passion all over again and throughout the whole world. This is the chastisement. And this all started a long time ago when Catholics ceased praying and worshiping as Catholics had for 2,000 years. And as a result, Catholics stopped believing as Catholics believed for 2,000 years until today, finally, Catholics are simply disappearing altogether. Just opening the door, opening the gates wide for the ancient enemies of the cross to simply take over. And that's what's happening. Because our liturgy is Protestantized and was Protestantized 50 years ago. Our religion pluralist, our politics Americanist. Where political evil is concerned, it's as if Catholics don't even exist anymore. We're not presenting an impasse for anyone. Why? Because we swapped the venerable old faith of our fathers for a mess of Enlightenment pottage, as the rights of man have eclipsed totally the rights of God, and we have no sense of man's duty to his Creator. We've become de facto Freemasons, and as a result, we've surrendered the Christian ground on which to fight the forces of militant secularism which are at war with us, which are at war with the cross, and with whoever dares stand beneath that cross in solidarity with the one who was crucified on it. And what is the modern Catholic's response to this all-out war on Christ and on the cross? What is the response? What's the best we can come up with? Oh, I don't know, theology of the body? New evangelization, whatever that means. Certainly doesn't mean restoration of the missionary spirit of the Catholic Church, which converted half the world. Not that. No, it's a new evangelization, which does something else. Or maybe World Youth Days. Maybe that's the answer. God help us, ladies and gentlemen. We don't have an answer. We've morphed into some sort of Protestant hybrid thing that does not present a threat to anyone who is trying to attack Christianity in the world today. Our hope and the hope of the whole world lies in the abandoning of the spirit of Vatican II. It's as simple as that, and returning to the old faith. The hope of the whole world rests in the proclamation of the kingship of Christ, the very same kingship of Christ which was completely ignored by the Second Vatican Council. Our hope and the hope of the world rests in the restoration of the Catholic Church, the return of the old Latin Mass, yes, and the united resolve to reject the false promises of him who offered Christ all the kingdoms of the world if he would only bow down. Christ refused Satan, and so must we, even if they threaten us with martyrdom as a result of our fanaticism. And the problem is, the heartbreaking thing, is that we're going to make such lousy martyrs if we fail to realize what must be done and what must be done right now. We must become Catholic again. Nothing else matters. The spirit of Vatican II is no longer merely threatening the liturgy or the traditions of whatever of our fathers in the faith. No, now it is threatening our families, our way of life, the lives of our own children. We need to wake up. We need to become Catholics again. We need the Catholic Church, which still has her infrastructure throughout the whole world. If she returns fully to the old faith, we can still turn this around. If not, it's chaos. They're ripping the heads off of Christians in the Middle East right now. And they're going to do the same thing here in America soon if we don't stir ourselves to the obvious reality of the situation, and that is, as St. John Fisher put it, the fort has been betrayed, even by those who should have defended it. Don't you see? The Catholic Church has been infiltrated. The problem today is not that poor public school brainwashed mob down in Indiana who don't even know half the time if they're men or if they're women or what they are, let alone why they are here on God's earth. They are only doing what they've been programmed to do all of their lives in their public schools and in their broken homes. The problem today is the evil spirit that has taken hold at the heart and bosom of the Catholic Church. That's the problem. That's the real problem. What's happened to the Catholic Church, the only moral authority the world has ever known, and the very thing those poor folks down in Indiana have been deprived of, the truth. The Church needs to give the world the truth again. In charity, the Church needs to teach the moral theology of the Holy Roman Catholic Church. And until that happens, we cannot blame the world for behaving as pagans or worse. They were never given the truth because the Church withheld it from them. And by church, I mean the Church of the Second Vatican Council. Until that evil spirit of the Second Vatican Council has been exorcised, we can expect only chaos and persecution. In Indiana, right now, they're shutting down pizzerias and bakeries and little cookie shops because the proprietors, little old men, little old ladies, children, their grandchildren, are daring to profess fidelity to their Christian beliefs to traveling news crews that come into their restaurants and their shops and say, do you believe in Jesus, basically? Are you going to stand by your Christian? They say yes. They're in trouble. Their shops are being shut down either literally by the government or because of the protests from the mob and the fear factor. Now, these people aren't discriminating against anyone. They're just thinking the wrong thoughts. Haven't we seen this before? Almost in living memory, certainly in the living memory of someone my age, our parents. Remember? This is Orwell. This is the Soviet Union. This is thought police. This is the Gestapo. This is Nazi Germany. This is just 60, 70 years ago. I know the modern world knows nothing about history and is doomed to repeat it, but for goodness sakes, this is living memory history that we are now repeating. This is where we are. It's something that's almost unfathomable. Good news. Is there any good news? I can't think of any good news right now other than the fact is that millions do still believe. And the fact is the hate, the visceral hate that we are seeing now in Indiana and all across the world and in Europe for the tiny little fragment or remnant of what is left of Christianity suggests desperation on the part of those demons who, let's face it, who have been at war with the cross for 2,000 years. They never win. These guys are perennial losers. What do we call it? Millennial losers. They will never win. So what we need to do simply is keep the faith. First, restore the faith. Understand what's happened to the church. Decide to keep the old faith. Restore it in our homes and in our lives. Make Christ the King, if nowhere else, then just in our homes, because that will spread and that will have an effect, spiritual and otherwise. And outlast this newest reign of terror that these demons are creating now in the world. And that's, I guess, at the end of the day, that's all we're trying to do here at Remnant TV and at the Remnant newspaper. We're trying to keep the old faith. We're trying to unite the clans. And you may not agree with everything that we say and do, but one thing is for sure. The Remnant is among the very last voices, believe it or not, on the face of the earth to speak the truth of Christ in the public square without trotting out some lame little apology 3 days later. Well, you got that at least. There is a small traditional Catholic press that is still limping along, but we need some help. So please join us, subscribe to our newspaper, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, do all those things, subscribe to us on YouTube, and let's stand together for Christ the King in these dark times. Let's stand together for Christ, even in a modern world that obviously hates him and all who would follow him. We need to stand together. And that's one thing that we actually can do if we put our minds to it and start praying about it and doing it right now. So a blessed Holy Week to all of our friends and allies around the world, and a glorious Easter. Listen, the times are dark right now, and it's frightening. It's a little scary. It's a lot scary. But we've not given up, and we know that millions all around the world haven't given up either. There's no reason to give up. The media creates the impression that the whole and entire world has abandoned Christ, when that, in fact, is not quite true. And there is still reason to hope. There's still reason to fight. So long live Christ the King. I am Michael Matt, and we'll see you next week.